Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive, said author Howard Thurman. Welcome to the second season of the Vulnerable Power Show. Heart-to-heart, unscripted dialogues with world leaders who are shining examples of the unfolding leadership ascension. Hear from these creative leaders and visionary entrepreneurs who have traversed deep leadership transformations and inner alchemy, actualizing their vision for a better world. We share raw insights and practical tips so you too can transform painful experiences and old energies as fuel for your leadership growth and collective good. Join us and listen in so we can all bring hope, inspire transformation, uplift the world, and show what is possible through heart-centered, vulnerable leadership. As Margaret Mead, anthropologist, once said, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world. For indeed, that's all who ever have." Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Vulnerable Power Show, Season 2. It's already been a second season. I can't believe it. Why are we here, and what is this all about? If you're new to the Vulnerable Power Show, I invite you to subscribe, check out the prior episodes. Today, we're going to have a very, very, very beautiful episode that brings in mindfulness into finance and banking. Now, this is not only a show. I know I call it a show. That's really a misnomer. It's an immersive experience. What we are intending here for this space, for this show, is to inspire leaders wherever you're at on your leadership journey, to inspire you to move forward, to bring forth this paradigm shift of leadership ascension, to bring hope and encourage you that you too can do it wherever you're at any stage of this process. And today I have a dear soul brother that I met last year on a social media platform. And his name that you can see already says it all. As soon as I saw what he was up to, Yogi Banker, I was like, I need to know this guy, because for many, many years, I was in the integrative law movement, bringing mindfulness and more wellness understanding to the legal community while I practiced. And I didn't know when I did sit with Scott that he also has a law background, with the branding being Yogi Banker. So that'll be an extra treat for us today, because this season I also wanted to espouse some law stuff as well. So it's a real treat to have you here, Scott, and I know you have a lot to say. So let's drop in with how you feeling, how you doing today? How's Scott?
Has. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's such a pleasure to be here and connect on this soul level. So thank you again for the opportunity to come and speak to you all. So yeah, I mean, as we were saying earlier, I've had a tough day, but every day is a different day working in the financial industry. So some days are easier than others, and I had a challenging day, but we've moved past that, and I'm really pleased to be here.
I appreciate that, brother. There's not often somebody you meet for the first time doing a yoga pose outside the London Bridge in a suit, and your form, I gotta say, legit. You know,
Alignment was good.
Your alignment was better than I'll ever be in this form, probably.
I'm pleased.
Yeah, so as the audience may or may not know, as you may or may not know, we kind of go with the flow, hit record, and have a general outline and see where it takes us. So why don't you drop in with what brought you to where you're at today in terms of this transformation? Because many people listening may have struggled, or they may be stuck in transformation. They may not have had their awakening to their calling.
Yeah.
So talk to us, take the mic and run with it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think, like everyone on their wellness or spiritual journey, or not everyone, but I think a lot of people start off from a position of vulnerability, as the title of the show suggests. And going back to 2006.
Okay.
Well before the yoga started, incidentally, I was given I was speaking to a therapist at the time, and she said, "Would you like to try some Reiki?"
Okay.
And I was like, "What's that?" But I went in good faith along with the practice, and I lay down on this treatment bed, and this lady performed Reiki on me. And after the end of the session, I felt like
Go slow. What's Reiki? Because some people may not even know these spiritual concepts. What's Reiki for the audience? Break it down, 5th grade style. Yeah, please. Sorry to interject.
Wow. Sure. Reiki is a form of, I guess, energy medicine, I guess, energy healing. And Reiki stands for God consciousness, essentially speaking, and it's channeling the energy of God or a higher power, or however you want to describe it, into another person, and you are the channel.
So you're getting that. So keep going. So you're there getting that treatment. Got it. Cool.
And I just remember after the treatment, I remember just lying there going, I'm in suspended animation. I can't feel my body. I'm simply lying on this treatment room. This is so surreal. And after that moment, I just had that right. This is the light. World has changed. World has changed. It's like, okay, this is surreal. She just used her hands, and I'm just floating.
Had something like that before? I mean, had you like partied or done plant medicine? Because that's going to be on this show before your episode airs. So like, had you had altered states of consciousness, something like this? Was this your first time going, holy cow?
First time completely conscious and just completely like, holy cow. I mean, this is a very different experience from an altered state in terms of, taking anything I believe would be taking a substance. Otherwise, this was completely conscious, completely just, wow. And for me, it was like, it was an eye opener in terms of actually, well, I can heal myself, or I can actually receive healing without taking substances or medication or otherwise. And to me, it transformed my approach to wellness and the journey that I was on back then in 2006, and still are on to some extent.
Were you ill? Were you ill before? I mean, if you're comfortable sharing, because I always appreciate how raw you can go. But were you ill, or can you explain kind of before this treatment, what led you to this, like in terms of what even took you to consider Reiki? Because some people, I feel like, are scared. And so like, why did you consider an alternative treatment at all?
Yeah. I mean, I think, there's always an element of, it was anxiety at the time. And I think it really, I think when the disturbances in with your mental health, often you don't know where to start. You're afraid of going to a doctor in terms of the stigma associated with that, and that's now changing.
Right.
But also you kind of want to avoid the medication route. We know the known side effects of these things, and so I was really determined to find a more natural way of healing.
I appreciate that.
And so for me, discovering this approach to Reiki, or approach to healing through Reiki, this energy healing, hands-on healing, to me was it was game changing in terms of using our natural forces and in effect feeling better naturally speaking, and working with others to help that. And then actually the journey started, and then I started to explore, well, how can I find this regularly speaking in London? And something was aligned, because I ended up seeing a very spiritual person who unfortunately is no longer with us, who led me into the work of Paramahansa Yogananda, autobiography of a yogi.
Wait. What? Are you serious?
Yeah. Paramahansa Yogananda.
So if you're listening, literally, we don't script this. And some of the times, if we've seen the show, you see my surprise raw, because I know some of the speakers really well. Scott and I have chatted in depth a few times. Yogananda has a very near and dear place in my life, and it's blowing me away. So keep going. So I'm like, okay, that's another synchronicity and why our paths have converged. Keep going. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I got introduced to Kriya Yoga, and not so much the practices, but just reading about it, and meditation, this connection to God, and so forth. And I was just very fortunate. And I did Reiki level 1, level 2. And that's where the path really started. And, then the path continued to evolve, getting exposed to acupuncture, Pilates on the more physical level. And then the yoga arrived, actually about 9 years ago now, just before I started my current job, where I work in now at Deutsche Bank. And my partner at the time said to me, why don't you try yoga? It's really good for stress. It's not about, you should become more flexible or stronger, which every second guy thinks about. I'm not flexible enough to do yoga. Here's your story. I went for the stress aspect. I went for the more mental side.
Everybody thinks it's about splits. You know what I mean? That's the commercialization of it, that it's stretching. It's so much more, as you're going to unpack for us. So yeah.
Totally right. Yeah. So I went for the mental side, and I'm really glad I did that, because my first 6 to 12 months of my still am in the current role, was very challenging. It was a new role, new team, new skill set, very steep learning curve. And having that 1 hour a week, albeit it's actually in a contemporary art gallery in Notting Hill. Those of you who know Notting Hill in London, it's quite an interesting place to live in terms of quite bohemian, although becoming more modern these days. But I ended up having my first yoga experience in an art gallery, regularly speaking, in a contemporary art gallery. I mean, your background is pretty cool. This is way more than your background, right? This is kind of really out there. and I love that. So I was getting immersed in yoga with all this contemporary art, and then, then I went on my first yoga retreat 6 months later after I started practicing. And
can I interject? Why yoga, real quick? Why because it sounds like you got immersed in all of these. So I get curious, if you don't mind. It's why yoga? How did yoga land? So when you got into it at that leg of your journey, and before you go deeper into your trainings and such, why yoga? If you were to say, what about your soul's calling, resonance, essence, energy? What was it that this is my toy, if we use that analogy? Why not the other toys? Why not the other toy? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I guess the great thing about yoga, at least on yoga asana, there's physical movement. And I think through movement, we can shift our mind. So you do notice that the states of mind do shift through movement. So that's powerful. And I think, secondly speaking, it's the space that's created through the practice, right? It's
yeah. What do you mean?
So what I mean by that is actually physically going to practice somewhere. In my case, it was the art gallery, and the dedicated time for that. And then the separation of thoughts that occurs between what's going on in your life and your yoga practice. And then suddenly there's a sense of like space that opens up, and then you can start to relate to your stress or whatever's on your mind at that particular point in time. And then things start to get processed. And then you walk out a completely different person. Well, I'm generalizing there, but I think to some extent, people's experience of yoga is very much about processing stuff, whether on a deep traumatic level or just on a sort of more everyday stress of life.
Correct.
There's something that goes on through movement, through breath, through meditation, and then it's about, as you said, the channeling of energy through the core of the body. And to me, this was, when I had my first experience of yoga, was great in London. Then I went on my first yoga retreat, and I was in Spain, in Andalusia, a beautiful part of Spain in the south.
Wow.
And I remember I was in this seated twist, Ardha Matsyendrasana, half Lord of the Fish, and I was looking out in this green field, and I was like, wow, I'm completely still. I'm in this yoga pose, and I'm seeing this lush green field. And to me, it was like, okay, this is transformative. This is like you're staring at life as it is, through stillness, the mind becomes clear, and then you start to see everything.
Speaking my lingo, baby. Put the words in your mouth telekinetically, probably. I don't know. Okay. So I appreciate that clarity and your why around it. Keep going.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not one of those, or haven't been one of those people who said, right, I've discovered yoga, I'm going to go and become a yogi, and I teach full-time yoga, and I love my yoga mat, and teach 30 hours a week.
Right away for you. It wasn't right away for you.
It never was. I mean, I think for me, I love my yoga, and the more I practiced, the more I went to class, and then I eventually did yoga teacher training, and I met my partner and so forth on a yoga retreat, and it all kind of was happening. But I was never one of those people who was like, oh my God, I can't stand my day job now. I've discovered yoga. I'm going to become a yogi. I was like, well, I work in finance. I like my job. Let's be practical. Let's be practical about it as well. It obviously supports my lifestyle. It's interesting. I'm still growing. There's a side of me that still relates to the financial side. And I think that's common for everyone, especially the people you speak to in leadership roles. We all have different sides to our personality. There may be the more kind of the spiritual side, there may be the more sort of side which relates to the financial side, the more business side of people. There's the sporting side. And so we all have different archetypes. The warrior, the magician, the wanderer, all these different archetypes within us. So for me, I could see different sides to my personality, yet still in finance, and practicing yoga. And I was like, well, so what? I practice yoga and I work in finance. And then actually I started to meet other people who are in finance who work in yoga too. Other people in finance who practice yoga. So I was like, oh, you work at JP Morgan. Oh, you work at Bank of America. Oh, great. This is cool. So I realized there were lots of other yogi bankers out there.
Interesting. Well, this is interesting. It's very synchronistic, because where I've seen my sweet spot emerge as I've done more of this quantum energy, whatever you want to call it, tomato, it's really about what I've seen now is, and a lot of people now, it's become clear to me, is we have two sides, right? And you're alluding to it very impeccably. You have this impact side, let's call it, from my verbiage, of my day-to-day, my householder, which is what they used to call it, as you know, in the mystic lore, right? With Yogananda and some others, they were way showers that are now, we're in a time frame, is the way I understand it, is that they're going to overlap. We can be a yogi and a householder. So if you're a householder, as you're alluding to, Scott, you would leave all of this and then you'd go and be a yogi, which means you'd go leave your family, go to an ashram, or you go to the mountains and you become a mystical kind of a lifestyle. And so here we have impact, the 9 to 5. And I get a lot of people that go, Haas, I really respect what you do. You're over here. And I'm like, well, that was hard. And it sounds like you had a similar journey, is you brought the soul and impact together and blended them. And so the way you said it, I go, well, by Jove, that's kind of like my message in a sense, because it's about coming out of the closet, not to, make it about that like homosexuality movement. It's this notion of that it is a part of us that we hide and we separate. And that's interesting that you brought this up too, because it's a very, very prevalent theme. How did you, I sense that's what you're going. So keep flowing, because that's where it's like the merger is what people are afraid of, because it's the stigma, right? It's this, I'm going to be known as that kooky banker guy or that kooky lawyer guy, which is in my case. How did you talk to us? Keep flowing. And then I'm curious, because you brought that up. I'm like, how did you blend then? How did you harmonize?
Really interesting question. So I've always been, always had a creative side to me. I'm left-handed, very left-handed, very right-brained. Left-handed. Yeah.
Oh, I do. You Ned Flanders, you from Simpsons. Anyways,
very cool. Yeah. So I've always been very left-handed, very creative, and enjoyed writing. Did very well at school in English, and I started a WordPress blog. And my partner, we said, I was walking in Paris one afternoon. She was living there at the time. I was traveling, and why do we call it Yogi Banker? And I really just remember the time we're walking up this street, in Paris. Let's call it Yogi Banker, and registered the domain, and then the way we went on WordPress.
So she downloaded it?
Sorry?
She downloaded it? I call that download. Like it popped into her head?
Yeah. It was a very much a mutual thing. I can't remember exactly whether she came out with it, but together it was like Yogi Banker. Yeah.
I love it when that happens. It like pops in. Yeah.
Yeah, it just happened, right? Yeah. Both of us. And so I registered the domain, and I'm glad I did, because I've met other Yogi Bankers out there as well. I was the first, I must admit. So
were you open to it? Real quick, so bear with me on a technical point. Were you open to the download, you and your partner? Because it seems like you're in again, we're talking about liminal space. What you didn't say it, what that space you're talking about is what I would call liminal space. So were you open and searching? Because I sense that's a requirement to open our antenna, let's call it, to receive these insights. Were you open or were you closed? Like, were you pondering it?
Yeah, we were just walking along in a street and just like, let's call it Yogi Banker. Yeah, it was very much.
So you were in a reflective state, kind of. Yeah, sounds like.
But in Paris, it's bohemian. It's very kind of, there was lots of ideas were coming, and so it was just like, let's call it Yogi Banker. And actually, interesting enough, and I just wrote a blog post about it last week. Part of the motivation for my story about Yogi Banker wasn't necessarily about, okay, I'm a yogi, I work in finance. It was actually about, some of it was about, okay, there's stuff about sort of orthomolecular medicine we need to know about. We can treat people on a biochemical level in terms of nutritional therapy, 100%. Rather than corrections in people's biochemistry through nutritional supplementation, which I happened to discover. I was
DNA, right? Even DNA with epigenetics. Yeah, there you go.
Epigenetics and the great work of William Welsh and Carl Pfeiffer and so forth. So I was kind of quite interested in that side, and I just wanted to write. But then, of course, I started to write about yoga and so forth, my experiences. And I was very undercover. I didn't reveal my name. I didn't reveal, wasn't even a profile photo. And I was like, I'm really not coming out. I'm kind of like going to keep writing, but I'm just Yogi Banker, right? And there was like a photo of me, but it wasn't me. It was just this avatar. Avatar, exactly. And so, and then the moment came where a well-being or wellness magazine started up in London in 2016 called Balance. And it just started up, and I wrote to the editor saying, this is my story. And she's very open and very honest. And And she said, yeah, we'd love to hear about your story. And would you like to write an article for us? And about balancing spirituality and yoga and finance. And I can share that with you if you like. It's on my website. And it was about, yeah. And she said, well, what do you want to do in terms of identity and coming, and, who's the author? And I was like, oh God, And at that moment, I just said, I had to, again, initial reaction was, I'm not coming out, and then you just had this moment, fuck it, I'm coming out,
Why? Tell me why. Tell me why. Because some people in the audience, I know I was. Real quick, my moment was I was at a fundraising mixer with an ex-girlfriend in 2000. This is before my sabbatical awakening, whatever you want to call it. That, a lot of people have heard on the show. It had to be 2013, 2014. And literally I had a buddy. We were in a networking group together, executive C-level, C-suite networking. Shout out to Craig. I love you, bro. And literally, and we knew each other. And then in that moment, like there was this, I think he overheard me say something about the Mayan culture and ayahuasca. And I haven't even done ayahuasca. It was this, and then he kind of leaned in. We talked many times, had networking coffees, you know the drill. I mean, you're in the C-suite like I am. And then it was just like, we looked at each other and he was like, wait, you're woo-woo too? You're spiritual too? Wait, and it was like kind of like we're drug dealers. I was like, we can't talk because we're at a financial firm. Literally an RIA financial firm. And we were around very, let's be honest, very traditional, square, conservative industries. And so, yeah, it was, I never forget it. So what was your resistance? Because mine was, they're going to think I'm a freaking weirdo.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And it was soul karma and all this stuff that, we won't talk about now. So, yeah. So what was your before you said fuck?
Yeah, yeah, it was just like, get it out. I think for me, it was obviously that fear of, being seen to be a weirdo. I think yoga has evolved in terms of its reputation, become more mainstream now. But, I think there was a real sense of like, and what I was writing about was also pretty personal, was pretty sensitive.
Vulnerable.
And then vulnerable, exactly. And then you just have these moments of just like, you know what, you've reached that point. You've reached that point where you just got to let it out and come out. And I just did that, and I haven't regretted that since. And obviously, it's evolved to a much bigger project since then. But for me, you obviously you face these points in life, right? Where I was like, okay, someone wants to take you public, and you're like, what do? Do you hide, or do you come out? And you're like, you take those decisions, and you just lean into it, and you just come out. And to me, it was very liberating. The website suddenly had my profile photo and my name and so forth, and it's evolved from there.
That's really interesting. So in a way, it sounds like I took a couple of notes that I'm gonna ping you on in the flow, maybe later. It sounds like it was like Malcolm Gladwell. I haven't read the book. I know the concept, that tipping point, right? It sounds like the impetus of the energy was such that it was like, and you said the words, I love the F-bomb. There's a time and place for it, and it's very pointed and useful. Fuck yes, let's do this. Like, fuck it, let's go. Because I think that's that tipping point. Now, let me ask you, because the last episode of the first season, Soul Brother Richard talks about calling, and it sounds to me, I'm curious. Let me ask you this before you continue in your flow of your transformational journey that led you here. You said that you reached a point where it's got to be let out. What is this? I know it's your message. It's that. Would you say that that's your soul's calling? And could that have been your depression and anxiety? Because I've talked about this on the show. It's depression. It's suppression. It's at a point where the volcanic eruption, and most people don't. They'd rather hold the volcano and get more like this than to erupt. So what's your take on that? I was curious in terms of, as you know, I do a lot more of the energy work. So what's your take on that? How does that land for you in terms of, because that was interesting verbiage for me. And I talked about this on a workshop Saturday. So another synchronicity is that, fuck it, let's come out. I got to bring this message out now. You know what I mean? What was that about for you?
I think it was. I think, if you talk to people who've known me since the beginning of the journey and how much they've seen me change both physically and mentally, it was probably something to do with that now that you describe in terms of that anxiety and just having to let it out. And I think, to me, it was very liberating. There's a sense of release, and I think
cathartic.
Yeah, cathartic. Yeah, I think for me, and that gave me the confidence to write, and I wrote more and more about topics for which, for a lot of people, maybe quite left field. And I think, and obviously then the more image side of me coming out through Instagram and social media and so forth, and me doing yoga in a suit, I just became more confident as a person. I mean, the feedback I get from people, yoga in a suit. I mean, what? I mean, they love it. I mean, that's the great thing. It's like, well, he's doing that. That's. It's like, to some extent, I think people, they're not envious. They're like, wow, he's doing that. He's actually following his passion.
I'll tell you about this. So 2016, I closed my office. My brother's tragic thing happens. I still hadn't learned. I had my burnout because I thought everything was good. You know about that. I've talked about it. We all have our own, denial symptoms and in our process. And literally this notion of going on my sabbatical and like leaving everything behind, I got emailed on LinkedIn and God bless them, people that are two leaders, two dear, I won't mention even their pronouns, that I was like, they're mindfulness lawyers. They teach mindful wellness, and they were scared. You could sense the scare. And it was that projection, what I call projection, right? Where it's like, oh my God, Haas, I'm so proud of you. I wish I could do that too. And I literally would message back, go, why don't you? What is stopping you? What is, I know I don't have kids. And at this juncture again, this goes back to why when you're a householder, and my camera's a little blurry, which I'll fix in a second. When you're a householder, not a yogi, you couldn't. And so that's what we're talking about. Undertone of this, to use Yogananda and your, what you've learned, Yogananda and them, these mystics, because of that. That's the fear, is that I got to leave all of this attachment behind. And that's, I commend you. You got the cojones, as they say in Espanol, right? So that's interesting that you had a similar response from people, because I see that that's the point of the show, is to spotlight these leaders like you and I and go, you can do it too, because people are scared. They're like, oh, I envy you. Like, why are you doing this? Go do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's part of my mission, and part of gives me purpose is inspiring others. And I think that's been the most pleasing thing in terms of bringing on a new generation of leaders and finance professionals who now incorporate yoga and meditation into their life.
So yeah, so before we get there to how this has shaped you and the essence of that and your mission and vision, which beautiful tee up, tell us more about your, I don't want to say resistances, again, because to inspire and give these, I guess, tips in a sense, if we can, and learnings of what you did, because we make it look easy. When we're on this side, we're like, oh, and I find that the more, and that's the premise of the show, the more I shared, okay, this is where it was grueling, the more people go, oh, it was hard for you too. You make it look easy. And I was like, no. We all have to go through the process and all this. And so, because you said something that's interesting, and I took this note too, is it seems like when you stepped into the flow, right? Because it sounds like everything's a current, and it's whether we resist it. It goes back to this, like, do you want to hold on and create turbulence, or do you want to flow? Then it seems like the pieces start to fall into place. And I'm seeing that regularly, not only in my practice, on this show, people see it publicly. Would you agree with that sentiment? And would you explain how the pieces before that weren't falling into place, and what did that look like? Because which goes back to the same question, the friction. Do you understand what I'm saying? Cogently, like, it's almost like once you get rid of the resistances and the frictions, which is tautological, you get in flow. Well, the reason you're not in flow is because you're scared, and it's like this catch-22. So if you break down that for us, it may help inspire the audience. It will inspire the audience to go, Scott had resistances too. Oh, wow. Or what were the trouble points? What were the points where you're like, oh shit, Haas, like that one point I couldn't really, it was a tough one. And what was that like, if at all? It may not have been. It may have been super smooth. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, I think once I came out, and if you use that word, in terms of actually becoming public, in terms of my blog, and
I say that.
Coming out of my blog and associated Yoga Banker with me, it actually, the whole process became very smooth. And I think, what I would say is this: is that the process since then hasn't always been smooth sailing. Obviously discovering the world of digital marketing and websites and all that, all the stress and hassle that goes with that. I mean, that's been a whole journey in itself, right? You're still learning on it.
Entrepreneurial journey, right? Yeah, exactly.
Entrepreneurial journey, right? It's like you think, okay, you have the vision and you want to go do it, and then you do it, and then you realize, it's like, oh well, I've learned something from that experience.
That's sort of what
You
I
know,
want for people, is bringing that spiritual and the practical, because you're exactly illustrating it. Is people have the vision, and then they may struggle on the entrepreneur. So it's that blending of the soul and impact. So you're alluding to that. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
yeah, totally right. And so, I mean, when I think about before, I mean, as I said, it was very much, to me, actually, if I'm brutally honest with you, there's always going to be a sense.
Be
There's always
gently
going to be a sense of
honest. Be vulnerably honest.
yeah. I think for me, I've always been different in a way, insofar as when I see something I like, I tend to become quite focused on achieving that. When I've done my Enneagram, I'm an achiever and all that, and
What is that,
understand
seven? No. What is your Enneagram?
I'm a 3 and a 4. So
I'm a 7 and a
yeah,
2.
7 and 2. Cool.
You're a 3, 4. I'll make note of that in my contact file for you. Okay, that's good to know. Okay.
In my psychiatric assessment.
Yeah.
And,
Well, it helps us.
anyway.
Well, real quick pause. Because this is something I use in my practice, and some people may have heard of psychometrics or different ways of learning about ourselves. Why was that useful for you? I know you may have done others. Let's use Enneagram, for example, which is based on, ancient mysticism and psychology. Why did you use Enneagram? Why did you even employ it? Or what was the efficacy, utility of Enneagram for you in your growth? Let's say that.
Yeah, I mean, Enneagram was not something I discovered by chance. I discovered it by chance, but only because of a coaching program I went on with a lady called Marika Massager, based in the UK. And it was part of her Clarity and Brilliance program that I discovered I was an achiever. And I think for me, that's been quite groundbreaking, because I understand, the way I work and the way I do things. And sometimes, I become maybe obsessive about things, in terms of, that's just understanding who you are, I think, is part of the journey too. And so for me, that's been quite instrumental in terms of, I guess, looking at two things. One, I think there's the idea that what's your vision and what's your mission, but also what drives you personally too. Yeah.
So it helped you learn how you tick. I call it like your user's manual, because when we're incarnated, I joke, I missed that line when God was like, you're going to come into reality. And I didn't get that memo of how does this tick? What is Haas? How does Haas operate? So it sounds like your inner mechanisms helped you then flow more, because then you're like not fighting your essence, not fighting the way you tick, so to speak.
Exactly. And I think understanding that has been, and still does, really help me today. And with my brand. And I guess, I think that in terms of resistance, I think that's completely natural. I think for me, I still work in finance, so even still, I face those resistance today. It's not like I've kind of like got rid of the resistance altogether. It's like I'm a free person, I'm a free spirit. I still face those resistance, right?
You're a Bodhi. You're not here. You're an Arhat. You're not here anymore. Yeah, the minute you don't have resistance, you're not here anymore. The world is, the nature of reality is
constantly. We are, I heard a beautiful quote on the weekend by a yoga teacher. It's we have to be unchanging within the changing. So it comes from Zen. Zen tradition. The world is constantly changing, and the challenge is to be unchanging within that constant change. So if the world is constantly changing, you got to keep up, and you got to adapt, and the resistance is always going to be coming in all the time. What you did 5 years ago with Yogi Banker is different to what I did today, and the different phase of life I'm in. So I think for me, it's the question as to, yes, there are breakthrough moments, absolutely. But even if I were to, become a yoga teacher or pursue Yogi Banker full time tomorrow, I'm still going to face different set of challenges, right? I'm originally from Australia. I live in the UK, and that puts pressures on my situation in terms of my where I want to live long term and all these things. So there's always things in life that life throws at you, right? And so that's the message, that we can be inspirational, we can lead, we can go on a journey and so forth. But we also need to be mindful of the fact that even if in effect we make that breakthrough step, there's going to be something else. And I think sometimes people get, disappointed in a way, or shall we say let down, because they make that breakthrough step and then they realize, well, they're finally, and then they realize, well, what's next,
Say the Reiki. So the Reiki sounds like it was a breakthrough. What would you say is one of the biggest breakthroughs you had? And what did that look like or feel like for you?
Actually I had this moment on the weekend, or actually on Friday. in class. I was leading a yin yoga class, and I was like, I was sitting there on a Friday morning. I was about to lead a class in yin.
When was this?
Online.
When was it?
On Friday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like sitting there just waiting for the students to arrive. And I was like, here I am leading a yoga class promoted within Deutsche Bank.
Trippy to think that.
That's trippy, right? Yeah. Now, I don't get hundreds of people coming to my class, but the fact is we've created a yoga program.
A class. I mean, yeah, exactly. The fact that there's even a class with any student.
A class.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes, and I'm like, here I've created a yoga program of yin, of chair yoga, beginner's yoga, normal vinyasa flow.
You and I know what this is. What's yin? Because I want people to know. Everybody does a lot of yang in the world. That's my theory. There's too much yang energy. What's yin yoga? Tell us about yin yoga real quick before you continue on your flow, please. And I hope you don't mind I keep interjecting. This is, you ask
no,
so many things that I'm like, ooh, tell them about that. Tell them about that.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So yin is, as you said, the opposite of yang, and within yoga, the world of yoga, as we know it today, most people associate the physical practice of yoga with yang styles of yoga in terms of physical movement, involves repetition, often fast-paced, standing postures, other inversions, arm balances, all these things you see on social media. That is what yoga is being projected as to the world. And now, relatively late in the tradition of yoga, although if you look at the yoga text, most of the yoga postures were seated, actually.
Yeah.
There is a style called yin, and yin is the opposite of yang. So if yang is very active, yin is very still. If yang is very light, yin is very dense. Is yang and so forth. So it's the opposite of yoga as we associate in terms of physical posture, which involves repetitive movement.
Why is that good for people to do the yin? Because, and I'll bring you back to this when I put pins in the topic. So real quick, take us down this rabbit hole further. Why is yin important for health, and why do you teach yin? Because a lot of yoga instructors I've met have heard of it. They don't teach it. So why do you teach it? What is the benefit that you see with teaching yin in terms of biophysical, the stuff that you love to talk about, that I love to geek out about too, so we can infuse that. The health, the biology, the soul connection. Why yin? Why, break it down for the audience.
Yeah,
please.
Absolutely. So absolutely. So I talked about yin is the opposite of yang, and we associate yoga with, or normal yoga with movement and the standing postures, and there's a sense of dynamic nature about that, and some may be more dynamic than others, but generally speaking, there's a sense of movement. Now, in yin, there's a sense of becoming still. We think about the 3 tattvas or principles of yin yoga. First off, you find your edge. The second principle, you be still. Third principle, you hold for time. Now, all of this works on a mental level, works on a physical level, works on a spiritual level. And when we find our edge, this is when we start actually really sort of touching into these points in life.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love this.
We can really, yeah. So when we kind of just allow ourselves to surrender into whatever we're facing at any particular point in time. And when we surrender, when we allow ourselves just to let go, then in effect, actually, we can start shifting things because the body is still, the breath is still, and we're allowing for time for things to shift. Now, that's on a really mental level. On a physical level, we're talking about stress. We're talking about joints, or stress in the word in terms of pressure being neutral. We're talking about opening the joints. We're actually encouraging stimulation through joints, through cells within bones and connective tissues such as ligaments and tendons to grow stronger, become more flexible, more mobile. This is actually where it actually happens on that sort of more yin level, whereby actually exerted stress after a period of time actually has a physical effect upon the body.
And what is that?
In terms of these,
it does what then? So explain one step further. What does it do? What is the effect it has?
Really good question. So basically, they say that actually, I think up to 50% of tightness in bodies is centered around joints. So when you actually a joint, And by stress, I mean either through tension or actual contraction. So tension lengthening, contraction shortening. Yeah. Generally speaking, what will happen after a period of time, the joint itself and the ligaments and the tendons associated with that joint will become more open. Yeah.
And
that's the effect.
The flow of the energy, then the blood flow, the cells, all the things you alluded to.
It's all about the qi. It's all about, because the traditional Chinese medicine, as you may know, the qi flows through the joints. Yeah.
Go real quick. So it's the biophysical current or the bioelectromagnetic current is the chi or the prana and all that for the audience. Yeah, keep flowing.
Exactly. And that flows through the joints, through the meridians. Yeah. So this is where the magic happens. And it's a really great practice if you want to become, if you want to improve your normal yoga, that is, do yin, because you will become more flexible. Right. And then secondly speaking, it just gives you the time. You know, you're asked to sit there for an hour. And I'm not doing restorative yoga, which is great. I'm talking about actively being mindful with whatever's on your mind at the particular point in time, and just surrendering to that through the posture. Because to me, it really brings in mindfulness, it brings in meditation, and it brings in the physical aspects of the body too. So for me, it's a really transformative practice. And I guess going back to where I was at this moment, I was like, yeah, I'm offering this at Deutsche Bank. This is crazy. This is amazing. You know, I really kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve on an elemental level with the Yogi Banker. Here I am running yoga classes at one of the world's biggest banks. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. That was only Friday morning.
So it's like when you have these breakthroughs and it reinforces how far you've come. Looking back, how did you maintain your hope when you didn't have any breakthroughs?
I think, you know what, one of my famous sayings is, you know, persistence always pays. Right? Persistence breeds results. I honestly believe that you've just got to keep plugging away. If you believe in yourself, if you have hope, if you love what you do, and that brings you hope, and connecting with others, even the relationship you and I develop through social media and meeting others, that brings a sense of warmth. It brings a sense of connection. It brings a sense of purpose. And when you have purpose, that's where actually things start to flow.
They're in your flow. That's beautiful. You had these breakthroughs. You've highlighting a really beautiful point, right? And I think Yogananda being the opposite of you as a Capricorn and you being a Cancer, there's a lot of in these traditions and these masters, let's call them, or these teachers and wisdom keepers, and I call it wax on, wax off. That, you know, the road to mastery is through that practice, that consistency, and you're highlighting it really beautifully through the art that you bring forth. Because through this mechanics, you then not only sit and enhance your capacity, because I like that. It's edge, still, hold. Right. This holding is what I've had to learn on my sabbatical, is what I would call it. I was pushed to my edge. I was frenetic and I had to learn the opposite. I had to sit with it, allow it to stretch me, which I sense also has enhanced your capacity doing these practices, which makes you do what you're saying, right? This, you can call it Zen, you can call it mindfulness. It allows you to then hold more space for what life is bringing to you. So then more flow. So the mechanics mirror the energy, right? So I love that you're highlighting this. And I mean, it shows to your discipline. I mean, you can't be, so let's transition this. Is there anything else on the journey and all that? Because you started to talk about your vision. So let's dive into that. What is Yogi Banker and all that? If you have anything else on your journey, you feel inspired, take a moment. And then if not, let's shift it to that. Yeah.
Sure. So one of the other things that interests me about Yogi Banker, what's been interesting for me, at least, that's shifted a little bit, is, you know, it's always been about the individual, you know, in terms of helping individuals become, you know, stronger, more flexible, less stressful. If I kind of identify 3 reasons why people come to my classes, it's those 3, and helping people on the mental level. I think that's been the biggest driver. But now I sense now that collectively speaking, the world is going through crisis. Yeah, we've seen it through COVID, but now the climate emergency is still there. You know, and you know, record rain, record heat. You know, it's almost every day you're seeing some sort of story in the media about what's going on around the world. For me, it was the bushfires back in 2019 in Australia, where saw a lot of my country burn for months on end, and it was very, disturbing in a way. I mean, I remember I was at a Sydney beach and seeing this smoke come down from the country, and this is crazy. I mean, and then mainstream, the Sydney itself was immersed in smoke for days because of fires in another part of the country. So it was horrific in terms of the flora and fauna who died and were destroyed, and obviously affected upon lives. And I think seeing that, and I realized that actually, if the world is going to change, it has to change collectively. And you can only change people collectively if, in effect, they become more conscious, if, in effect, they become more embodied, and they become more sensitive to their environment and to others.
Wait, whoa. I'm a banker, man. I don't know about you. Sensitivity is not going to make me money, Scott. God, I'm a lawyer. Sensitivity, that sounds weak. If I'm sensitive, I'm going to lose from my clients. Why do I need to employ sensitivity, Scott? That sounds like some woo-woo, foofy stuff. Talk to us about. I'm playing the cynic, as you know, because
Of course, no, absolutely. And I thought long about this. I mean, if I'm kind of want to approach this, I'm not going to get people coming to my class saying, "Hey, come to yoga because you're going to become more sensitive."
Yeah,
come to more conscious yoga, man.
Let me light an incense. Let's get into an asana and let's release our emotions. Yeah, that's not what you're going to get. Yeah, I get that.
So for me, I'll tell you, right. I mean, so for me, I'm realistic enough to know that, hey, my appeal of coming to yoga is not to save the world, but the point being is that if you set a vision, Now, as I heard recently, not that I'm a Clubhouse regular, but I did tune into one interesting show the other day where someone said, even if I don't achieve my vision, even if my vision is not achievable in terms of, actually it's so big, it's so vast, but every day I try, every day I set out and I set an intention, and you will change the world in some little way, and maybe in effect your mission will take off, and then the whole world become full of yogi bankers, and but you'll try, and I think if you look at the models of happiness, what they're saying at University of Berkeley and others, actually believing in the greater good is a source of happiness. Look at Greta Thunberg and all that, and David Attenborough and all that. I think there's a source of happiness.
Have you heard of Mo Gaudat? I believe I'm slandering. He's a former Google guy, and he's similar to what these people you're talking about. And he created Solve for Happiness. So a former engineer who lost the son, I believe, God bless him, and then so it's similar. So yeah, a lot of people are stumbling into this realization of like, even if I don't believe it, it's going to make my life better. So why wouldn't I want to make my life better if it's going to actually scientifically make my life better?
Well, that's it, right? So there's got to be a way in. So I think for me, it's thinking, okay, well, actually, I can improve the individual well-being of bankers. Yeah, come to my class, so you'll be less stressed and you'll become more flexible. But maybe together, actually, the consciousness will start shifting. People become more sensitive to the very subtle aspects of yoga. I mean, yoga is, as I've done worked on recently in terms of understanding the more subtle energies of yoga through the chakra system and so forth. Really powerful stuff. And I think that's the magic of yoga, that once you start, the body is the vessel, and then you get people to come to class, and then you may start seeing things start to shift as the journey starts to kind of go deeper into the world of yoga, and it's a never-ending labyrinth, I must say, in terms of my own experience. But for me, this vision, right, and is a world for which, in effect, it's more sustainable. I mean, if I talk about the pure numbers side in finance, you talk about making money. There is money to be made in sustainable finance, right? It's been called ESG.
Talk to us about that. I know this stuff. I want the audience here. Break that down. Yeah, keep flowing.
Yes, so there's a whole idea called ESG, or an acronym called ESG, which is environment, social, and governance. And essentially, these are pillars relating to what type of activity the financial industry should be supporting. So we're talking, obviously, the environment. We're talking about sort of climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation. We're talking about preservation of biospheres, water, land, diversity, and so forth. Right. So all these different kind of pillars of activity for which, I think that the UN has set out the Sustainable Development Goals in 2030, and there's a whole number of them. And if the world's going to achieve them, it has to spend $100 trillion or something by 2030. I could be wrong, but it's a lot of money. Now, that's money that could be spent towards developing renewable, power plants, anything which goes towards supporting these objectives. And obviously there's a return on capital and return on equity that's associated with that. So you can actually say, well, okay, you can make money, but you can make money in a more sustainable way. Now, obviously there may be a trade-off in terms of maybe a lower return, but actually if the consciousness of society shifts, you've already seen that, large institutions will not back today power plants backed by coal. Now, coal may be a profitable investment. Make banks a lot of money, but banks won't do that today for the most part. And so they may accept, okay, well, I may accept a lower return on equity, but actually investing for the future and I'm still profitable. So for me, it requires a recalibration of kind of expectations of how much money people can make. And I think once we're seeing now in climate change, it's affecting everyone. I mean, I live in central London and the streets are getting flooded. I mean, this is unheard of, and parts of North America too, right? So to me, there is hope. Yeah. And if there's hope, there's definitely a vision.
I love that. So it's interesting. You said a couple of things that are beautiful to like kind of weave them together in a way, because I call it the cauldron is the body. And I like that because what I sense you're doing and talking about is this notion of the energy and this. If you go into the body, you can work through your emotional issues, your mental issues, as you've alluded to. And I like then you weave in recalibration, because it seems like the financial system as well as the legal system, which we can talk about, these a little bit more too, are inefficient, and they mirror the inefficiency in the body. So it's fascinating because you're taking people in an industry that's inefficient. So tell me if I'm understanding your vision correctly, because maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. And then their system is inefficient, and then they're using their bodies and energies inefficiently. So by tweaking them, then that's a similar effect of why I do law as a vertical. Is that accurate? That you want to change
Got it.
system they're in?
Got it. Shifting energy, shifting consciousness, right? And that and through the body. I think that's been my experience. And I think I'm sensitive per se as a person, but I think I'm even more sensitive because of my yoga practice and meditation. I think this is the natural consequence of becoming more connected to this higher sense. I mean, we're all connected, right? We're all connected. I mean, whether for the food we eat, for the air we breathe, we're all connected, right?
And what takes us out of that connection is ourselves. So in a way, it's restoring your default natural harmony, right? As I've talked about, if you haven't heard this before and you're coming from Scott's audience, you can go to the first season and we talk all about healing in 3 episodes, and some of the stuff that you're interested in overlaps with that as well. So yeah, I agree with you, because I think that's it. Society, when you talk about sensitization, I would, mirror it with tuning in. And it's the reason we're not tuned in is we're blocking ourselves from tuning in. And I think that then goes down a rabbit hole of the trauma epidemic, burnout, is because, and which is, what you and I's stories mirror, right? We didn't know, stumbled into this. And then, in a way, obviously our dharma was being fulfilled, which we can go resonates. So that's interesting. Yeah. So as they say in the mystical occult, as is up, so is below. As is in, so is outside of you, right? The dualistic hologram universe. So it sounds like, hey, Huss, I recalibrate them. I want them to be recalibrated, finance and other professionals, so that way they can then go and be recalibrated as leaders in their industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about recalibration now. It's a bold vision, but why not try? I mean, the work for Deutsche, it's very focused on sustainability, and I think, to me, the link is there. It's obvious, right? How do we kind of start saying, okay, well, the bank has certain kind of goals from a sustainability perspective. Well, why not, in effect, actually encourage people so that they get in the right mindset relating to that? And so for me, yoga, in a very subtle level, can help towards achieving that.
What do you see? Why did you choose finance? So I want to bring in law, because I love that you have a law background, and as I said, I want to kind of bring that into this season, and we'll have a soul sister who's a more integrated worker like myself. Why did you say, okay, obviously you fell into finance. Why did you focus on yogi banker? Why not yogi professional? Why not, yogi leader? Why yogi banker primarily? What is it about the need you see? And I know you're alluding to some of it, to kind of bring it in more targeted. Why that industry specifically for you? Why yoga and finance for you?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. So a couple ways I would approach this question. So first off, when I started my journey as a lawyer, I started off as a paralegal at a Sydney law firm in the bank finance division. And I did very well at school in business studies, always, economics, finance, enjoy that. So for me, I was always naturally interested in the financial side. Although actually, I thought I'd be a corporate lawyer, not necessarily financial side. But I ended up in the financial division. Then I came to the UK on a working holiday, and was essentially only getting a 1 year. It's been 20 years now. Last weekend. I ended up in the derivatives group of a prominent international law firm called Allen Overy, and derivatives. Now, derivatives law back then was just starting to evolve. It's very big now.
The ground level. Wow.
So 2001 is the master agreements. 1992, kind of credit derivatives were just starting to emerge, the definitions and all that. I was there, and I was with some of the world's leading lawyers in this topic, right? And it was also a hot topic. There's very few people who were trained in this. I had the experience. And so actually, if you like technical aspects, derivatives is the perfect skill to have in terms of law. It's like building blocks, definition upon definition upon definition. Confirmations are they're almost unreadable. But if you love perfection, they are beautiful.
It's a technocrat's wet dream. I've heard that before.
Oh, completely. You look at it sometimes and you're like, what is this? And then you get really into it and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And you can see why people really dig this stuff.
Can you tell that we're both legal geeks, by the way? It's so amazing. Like, if you saw this jargon, you see people's heads explode reading boilerplate contracts. These are like next level what he's talking about. They're so intertwined, and it's insane. Even I'm, with my level of genius, I go, that shows how
completely
are you and I.
Certainly, I'm really into it. I was really into it, and still am. But I was really into this, and and then actually what's interesting, what I love about where I've got to now in my career is that, okay, there's obviously a side which likes the technical aspects. Yeah, I still do the trades. I still get involved in the very technical side. And then actually the yoga came along. Now, the interesting thing about yoga and the technical side of yoga is obviously there's the anatomy. Yeah. So, there's the body, which is just an infinite source of kind of fascination and knowledge, right? So we're talking about biomechanics, we're talking about physiology, we're talking about energetics of the nervous system, we're talking about a system itself which is so complicated and so fascinating. And I was like, and the style of yoga I was trained in is a vinyasa style, which simply is a flowing style of yoga, but the teacher was very precise on his alignment instructions. So for me, it was like, okay, well, you turn your left inner thigh in, so that shifts the pelvis down or down, up and out. And, so having these very precise cues to bring about the desired effect, which is very similar to a derivatives contract. Very technical, very precise. So there was like, wow.
In the world that anybody has ever linked derivatives in yoga. Keep going. This is awesome.
Yes. So for me, it was like derivatives complex, trades complex, yoga technical complex. Wow, we're talking about the lumbar spine and thoracic, and you're talking about this kind of system, and you're like, well, I can press that to make that happen in the body, and I can tell you to do this, so you can, one of my favorite cues my teacher gives was sort of, flex your toe to feel your back of your neck. That's cool, right? But you kind of do the whole body's one connected unit, right? So you can flex the toe through the fascia system and runs up through the body and back of the neck. So I love working on that very kind of fine, subtle level. And to me, it was like, okay, you mirror. There's a connection going on here between your technical mind, which obviously you like from your financial perspective, and how you like what you like in your yoga. So for me, it's bringing the two together, and that's why I've been able to continue to do what I'm doing. I haven't been kind of just gone in, oh my God, I'm a yoga teacher now, this financial stuff I can't do. To me, there's a sense of like, and I think this is common as we talked about the archetypes, understanding who you are, the way you think, and what makes you dig. That means you can, in effect, take away the labels as to who you are. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a banker. No, you enjoy what you're doing, so you just happen to practice yoga and you happen to work in finance. Yeah.
It's getting to the essence is essentially it. Yeah. I mean, yoga is, what does yoga mean? Again, what's the definition of yoga? Not again. I've said it on the show. What's your definition, or what you understand the definition to be? Because I'm not a trained yogi. I have done lots of hours. I'm not my So if they hear it from you, it's straight from the horse's mouth. What do you understand the definition, the essence of yoga to be? I'm talking about getting to the
yeah. Really, really good question. So obviously within yoga itself, there are many different types of yoga. So before I answer the question, what is yoga?
I was hoping you would do that. Break it down. Yeah, exactly.
There's yoga of sound, yoga of devotion, yoga of mantra.
I've never even actually heard of yoga. Is that mantras? Is yoga of sound mantras? I've never heard of that.
Sound. No, I don't know a lot about that, to be honest with you. I just know there's the yoga of certain sounds.
Okay. I'll
certain sounds you can recite, like the Bija mantras and so forth. But mantra yoga is actually about chanting. Yeah, so you can chant certain sounds in Sanskrit, which have a very kind of high vibration. Mm-hmm. But then there's the yoga of the physical body, hatha yoga. Then there's yoga of wisdom, yoga of knowledge. You know, there's always yoga of karma yoga, so obviously yoga of action and so forth. So different styles, some are focused on the physical body, some are not. But I think what is kind of drawing all these kind of common threads of yoga together is the meaning being connection to the self and inner self. Yeah. So there's a sense of yoking within. Yeah. And I think there's two meanings within that. One is actually going to within the self, or dissolving from your ego, so you're breaking free. Yeah. So it depends on which way you're coming at it. You're saying, okay, I'm going to connect my mind and my body, soul, or in effect, actually, I'm going to dissolve from my ego to connect to a higher self.
Well, they're the same in a sense because of the duality, right? As you know, it's because you got to go within to go outside. So it's almost like by mastering these systems, then you liberate and you break free, is what I hear you saying.
Completely. So it is a real sense of going within. So that's what yoga is. Yeah.
I appreciate that. So what do you see the future of finance going in terms of how you're going to contribute to it? Like why, furthering that why in banking in terms of then, the sustainable finance, all the beautiful things you've alluded to then and spoken to and gone into, then where do you see the future of finance? And then how do you intend to impact that future in addition to the stuff you've already said, if there's resonance on that? Yeah. Because I'm curious, so the ascension, the paradigm shifts that I talk a lot about. Where do you see the paradigm shifting in your industry in addition to the sustainability that you've alluded to? And then how do you see which I guess kind of brings in the legacy question that I like to ask. So kind of previewing it or in a way touching on it.
So the future of finance, it's a really interesting question. Obviously, people talking about cryptocurrencies and so forth. That whether that becomes the future of finance and digital finance, I'm not well versed in that. I understand what cryptocurrency is and blockchain and so forth.
Yeah, we're gonna have William on the show for that. I think that's gonna air before this episode.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'd be a really interesting episode. As I said, I think that as the world becomes more conscious, you're going to see more focus on activities which go support these sustainable activities and goals, and things which, we're already seeing bonds issued in relation to COVID-related bonds. So having a social cause, issues, financing in terms of the climate and the environment and so forth. I think that you're still going to have aspects of high frequency trading and so forth in terms of trading and dealing and so forth. But I think as the world becomes more and more focused on ESG, I think as climate change becomes more and more obvious. I mean, as Bill Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, said, climate change is a threat to financial stability. Soon that banks will be required to take into account how they're managing environmental risks in their business planning. So I think, and already you're seeing this in terms of deals being structured in a way which have a certain ESG component to that. Insofar as what I mean is that a margin may be paid if certain returns are achieved or goals are made. So I think the financial industry is going to become more conscious. I think it'll become more focused on sustainability, and I think just by virtue of the world becoming more conscious, I think it has to adapt. Yeah?
And then it's obvious to me and implied in what you've said already, what's your legacy and contribution to that. And then I have more after that too. A couple of things.
Yeah, my legacy is well, first and foremost is, as if you look at, which I look at on a regular basis, the work of Yogananda Paramahansa Yogananda.
That still blows me away that he's one of the guys. That's trippy, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. If you serve others, and serve God, and whatever God means to you doesn't mean God exists in terms of this higher power. There's something, whatever that personal relationship to God you have, in their own unique meaning. If you serve others and help others, then you're always going to be, shall we say, focused and have purpose. I think from time to time, I think we become, shall we say, focused on goals. But goals, to some extent, only achieve so much. There's always the what next after you achieve a goal. But if in effect your goal is to serve others, yeah, that is infinite. That is omnipresent. Yeah, that can never be achieved. But in effect, it never can be measured either. And I say that in a way whereby you can always continue to serve others, always continue to help others. If that's your mission in life, is to help others, then in effect that becomes very pure, it's very sattvic, it's very light, and in effect actually you won't have to be judged by or whether you've achieved that or not, because that's your goal, you've set an intention. And so for me, if I can help others become less stressed, become more stronger bodies and more flexible, and then in effect actually with my vision of helping others, creating a sustainable finance industry, that's what I would like to be. That would be my legacy.
And so it will be. Interesting. Yeah, actually, Yogananda, even before my sabbatical, because I've been in the mystic arts and Vipassana many, many, many years, and I never thought I'd find myself doing leadership healing type work. And yeah, I actually got to go to Lake Shrine. It was probably after Vipassana, one of the first retreats I'd gone to, and I got to actually meditate in, because if you go to that retreat center, in the boat that he used to meditate on, his personal library. I mean, his personal library is so much high vibrational energy. And like you feel the presence of lovingness. I mean, not to get too abstract on it. I mean, once you leave the body, you go back to pure energy. So that it's all energy, and it's a very beautiful.
Completely.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm a Reiki master, so it's like I wanted you to explain and unpack it for people, because I have a lot of these trainings, and that's why it's not about the teachings as much as it is how the teachings are impacting the leaders, as you know, and then how that's bringing out our collective ascension. Because it doesn't matter if you're going to stay, and that's the why I wanted you to bring out the unifying, because each one of it's not an accident that I'm a lawyer and then now I'm here, and then people are always asking me, oh, I don't know how to take this and make this into a business. And it's like, oh, now I see my legal background, because we're all going to weave this in. And I think that's the fear. People go, oh, this isn't going to be relevant, or this is going to be too weird, and there's so much judgment, which I know yoga is a lot about also, as you know, getting into, and you've talked about it, right? You're in that field and you're churning this way. You're out of your mind. You're literally out of your mind. You're in your body. You're in your senses, and you're in a greater sensory, extrasensory state, which is attuned sensitivity. You can feel, you become more conscious. So that's really beautiful. I really like that synergy popped up. I literally mentioned him in my meditation last week, and then two people were like, oh, Yogananda brought me on, I found autobiography and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
So another synchronicity here. Do you work? Amazing. Yeah, it truly is. The miracles are all around us, right, Scott? And it's noticing them, that the ordinary is really miraculous. And we've lost that, right? We've become desensitized, as you said earlier. Do you work with leaders outside of banking? Because I know it's Yogi Banker. Is that part of your mission that you see, or is there a role for this outside? And I know it's a leading question, as you know, us lawyers call it.
Yeah, leading question. So yeah, interesting. If I were to call my niche is finance professionals, so it's obviously my brand. But I teach yoga under the name of Scott Robinson, and so if you come to a yoga class and you work in marketing or accounting or whatever, you're welcome. Obviously, I teach. I'm Scott Robinson. I work at a yoga studio under the name of Scott Robinson. So
beautiful.
To me, whoever comes to my class is welcome.
Do you see this then? And I know you peppered in a lot of beautiful tips as how the yoga has shaped your leadership. Would you say, and I know it's a yes, how would the role of yoga shape leaders, in addition to what you said, to kind of round this out? Like let me rephrase that more cogently. What other leadership lessons have you gained from yoga that then there's an applicability to not only finance leaders, to greater leaders as a whole, that the yoga, it translates to leadership. Because there's some colleagues out there that do that. It's like leadership with yoga and this. I'm curious from your perspective, how has the yoga shaped your leadership? And then how do you sense that applies to other leaders? In addition to what you said, because you said a lot about how it shaped your leadership, anything else that you sense or comes through with that question?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of thoughts that come to my mind. I think first off, it's from what I observe in other leaders in the bank who've come out, if that's the word, that they practice.
They're waving their weird flags or their freak flags high, like us.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a sense of self-confidence. There's a sense of like, I've come out. I practice yoga. I do my yoga in the morning and so forth. And so there's a sense of being more grounded. I think that that you acknowledge that there's a part of you who does something which may not necessarily be what's traditionally associated with people working in the industry. So if there's a sense of self-confidence and inner belief. I think secondly speaking, you can use that time as a moment of reflection. Your yoga practice, as I was reminded today, come into your practice with setting your intentions. Sometimes people just set up to the mat without an intention. But if you set an intention, then and that can be your means of which in effect actually use to resolve or help you move through challenging moments in the industry. Let's face it, it's not easy. So having the mat there is your resource, right? I think thirdly speaking, in particular, becoming a yoga teacher. I think becoming a yoga teacher, the process, the teacher training, which I did at least, an immersion of 30 days intensive. And again, you can do it over a longer period, but I did an immersion of 30 days.
That's how you got trained? You did it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Did 30 days.
South node. You really are an Aries South node, like I told you before we started. Yeah, that's very intense, rigorous, boom, and you have the capacity. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it was possibly one of the hardest periods of my life. I mean, not only was it hard in terms of the effort, but I got, I flew around halfway around the other side of the world to Bali. I picked up a bug. I got sick, and I was sick for most of it. And I kept on going every single day. I kept on going. And then to see myself become a student, and I think everyone has those fears of public speaking or performing or whatever. So I think it's acknowledged that this is one of the biggest fears in life. As a yoga teacher, you've got to get up and teach in front of 30 or whoever people in your group who most of you have never met before, and do something you've never done before, and doing something in a new skill which you're still acquiring in a new environment. And then seeing the transformation for me from day 0 to day 30 and walking away going, wow, I'm a yoga teacher. I may be inexperienced, but I've done this transformation. There was a puja fire and puja and an offering and so forth. It was like, wow, I've really seen this transformation, not only myself, but my others. And then knowing what I went through, the physical pain, the mental pain of that experience, then taking that back into the boardroom or the workplace, that, well, I went through that. That's the source of strength. Yeah. That to me has been really powerful in a way. It really, I go back to those moments whereby I became a yoga teacher and I'm still working in finance, and that was a source of strength for me, and it gives me a sense of resilience.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, the resilience is interesting because I come at it from an energetic perspective, more schematic. Like, yeah, I mean, you've been stretched, and so you have more capacity to endure, to hold the things that come up in your leadership capacity enhances. So we can call it resilience. My interpretation is you enhanced your energetic field. You can bring in more light. So yes, that correlates to more emotional resilience. I think we limit ourselves when we only talk about the heart. We miss out the pure energy, which I know you appreciate and you do. That's beautifully said. Is intention called Sankalpa? Am I accurately saying it?
Sankalpa, yeah. Sankalpa, that's quite associated with yoga nidra, but Sankalpa could be used too, yeah.
As intention. So it's not synonymous with intention per se. Real quick, the power of intention is something I speak very regularly on, and I believe is very necessary when you do advanced inner work. Talk to us about what do you understand the power of intention to be? You alluded to it, that they come to the mat, they don't have intention, you want them to drop in. What have you seen as the power of intention in how you relate to it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think I think when I bring an intention to the mat, I think I'm bringing something to the mat for which, in effect, needs to be processed. Yeah, I think I'm bringing something to which, okay, I'm coming to the mat. Often there may be something that's going on in my life right now. I may feel not grounded. I may feel not balanced, or this is my time. I've had a long week. So if the intention is to actually to bring whatever you have on your mind at that particular point in time, to allow it just to be, yeah, and then to allow it just to move on and process itself. And that's what happens. That's the power of yoga. It actually, something happens through movement, something happens through breath, something happens through meditation, through your intention. And I experienced that on the weekend. Just discovering, doing some somatic work on Saturday morning, and just noticing, wow, my mind has shifted because I brought that intention. Yeah.
Could you have the same results without the intention? From your experience, I know we're talking existential or more theoretical, and that because I'm there's a reason. I'm curious what your take is. Right? Is a tree that falls in the woods without the guy listening or the girl listening still make a noise? That's essentially what it is, because it's like, will it still work without intention? I'm curious.
I think if there's no work without it, if there's work without intention, then what you're experiencing is just a purely physical experience without any spiritual context. What I mean is that you can go for a run, yeah, and you can feel high as a kite through the endorphins and anandamide and so forth. But at the end of the day, if unless in effect you've given credit to or focused on your intention, actually something won't shift. It's still going to be there. And I think in effect you need to say, okay, I need to work through this. I need to give it time. I need to let it be. And in effect, actually bring into your awareness. This is the key aspect. As I was listening to a mindfulness talk today, awareness with attitude. And I think that's the key. Intention is about awareness.
Bingo.
If I would describe it that way, yeah.
Bingo. Yeah, I liken it to like the laser, and then how the laser then has to be like honed. And so I think the state of affairs in the world is intention and consciousness is synonymous for me. But if you're unconscious, you're unintentional. I know they're not exactly per se the right definition. And I think that's the state of affairs in the world, that the world is on fire literally and metaphorically, because there's so much lack of consciousness. Now, you can call it desensitized. It's, tomato, it's a lack of attunement. It's this lack of intentionality. And I think that what happens is, energetically speaking, the energy frays and it goes anywhere. And it's more chaotic, it's more disorderly, it's more unnatural or disharmony. And I think that's what my experience with really advanced practices, intention. And you mentioned yoga nidra, which is, for the audience's sake, lucid dreaming, right? It's that dreaming with intention in yogic dreaming. So I think that's what it does. It does this. It like kind of guides the energy, and it's like where the mind goes, the energy flows, as or the focus. I think the intention is like the gutter. If you bowl, it's like the lanes. If without the intention, we could go in the gutter. Anything is possible, and I think that's what's happening in the world. Is we're in the gutter because there's been unintentionality for so long. It's like we're all
completely,
and then chaos prevails. Not that there's anything wrong with chaos. It's this notion of, if we're complaining of lack of order, then it sounds like intention brings some order, or contributes or correlates to order. Yeah,
I really like that. Yeah, absolutely. Chaos and intention, perfect.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Sometimes things flow through. I tend to say some things that are.
No, I love that. I think in effect, actually, as you said, chaos is a natural state. I think is it Newton's third or third law of thermodynamics. Chaos is a natural state, right? But actually, what we're seeing today in the world is this total chaos, as you said, without consciousness, without integrity, and I think we're in the. This is probably a natural state in terms of where we are, right? But in terms of what we're seeing, I think whether on the political level or whatever, right? It's just and I think that's led to the rise of consumerism and so forth, and all about the individual and I. Yeah. No intention for collectively.
Yeah, because lack of the intention of the we. And I mean, one could say that the reason derivatives are so impeccable is there's so much intention put in, right? So you can even translate that to something that's not abstract and go very practical. The reason these technical things were so precise is there was so much microscopic intentionality put in. So there you go, another a non woo, let's say, example. So that's interesting. I had one thing popped in. Oh, so in a way, I don't know how much Ayurvedic you're studied. They have the 3 principles, and it's alluding the names. It's like Raja, Sama. It's like the constructive force, the destructive force, and then the balance.
So they got the Tamas, the Rajas, and the Sattva. Yeah.
Go slow. Say them for the audience that may not say the 3, because I forget them. I don't have the. I didn't.
So Tamas.
TAMAS, right? TAMAS.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tamas, yeah, which is heavy, dense, and very dark.
Okay.
Then there is not dark. Well, it has
that's
dark.
the deconstructive, right? That Tamas is the chaos that we're talking about, right? Okay.
Tamas can be. I think we all have an aspect of tamas in us. We need stability in our life. Let's face it.
Right.
And I think Rajas is associated with power, with ego.
Rajas, correct? So this is Rajas.
Correct,
Tamas, Rajas, okay. And these are natural elements found in the world, in a way, like natural archetypes of energy, okay? And the third?
All within us. Are always constantly moving. And then Sattvic, SATTVIC.
Got it. And what's the because I interjected, the first one you explained, the second and third, then Rajas and that, what are they? Could you explain Tamas?
So Rajas is associated with ego, with power, our sense of I in the world, yeah, and we need a little bit of that, right? If we don't find our power, then what are we? We've become this empty vessel, right? So we need to understand who we are through our vulnerability, right? And then Sattvic is a sense of lightness, purity, real essence, for which in effect is what we kind of aim for in a lot of ways. But we can't always be just lost in the transcendental or auric field. We need to come back into the real world, and that's where the tamas and the rajas blend in. So these are always constantly moving. They're called the gunas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the harmony. That's what dropped in when we were talking about chaos and intention, because you find that trinity in mysticism, because it shows up in Taoism, it shows up here in these 3. So it's that popped in. I wanted to kind of ask your take on it. Is there anything else from your end as far as like you feel inspired to share with the audience, or kind of bring forth in terms of your mission, legacy, or anything else you haven't mentioned that you wanted to bring up? What comes through?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's I think for me, that's what I would say to people, as we talked about earlier, that be inspired to do something, and if you love what you do, then set an intention. And as I said, persistence breeds results. Being consistent. I've seen changes in my body. I've seen changes on a professional level, business level. Being consistent breeds results, and I think that's the message that I would say to people. And then finding your purpose in relation to that, and just allow your calling just to come. Yeah, and don't think I'm one or the other. I work in finance, and I like yoga, but I can't do both. You can. This is what it was all about: becoming more conscious, and we're kind of multifaceted in terms of our personality.
Or we have like those 3 energies. Yeah, multifaceted. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautifully said. I'm gonna, this popped in, so I'm gonna ask, and not that we're gonna disclaim, the lawyers in us, we don't guarantee that this work will actually contribute to monetary results. Now, Scott, would you say that your actual yogic practice has made you more money? Because if anybody's listening in the finance industry, I've worked with finance professionals. They're like, how is this gonna help me make more money? Not to oversimplify, right? Or lawyers, how is this going to make me fight better or get more clients? Would you say there's a practical or pragmatic or ROI to having done this inner work for yourself? I've never asked this before. I'm curious. It popped in. I know it's a really, it can be esoteric tied to practical.
I think the inner work for me, I'm getting to the point now where I can see a business model which has potential, for which, with the right execution and the right team, could potentially I currently have a day job right where I am, and could potentially meet that, if not more. And I think, okay, well, as one of my colleagues or associates I met, why are some spiritual people so successful? Yeah, some of them, like Deepak Chopra and others. Because they love what they do, they believe what they do. And to me, finding the right model behind that is, so to me, the inner work has, because I've channeled it, I've focused on my niche. I know exactly what my clients are, their pain points, how I can help them. So to me, the inner work has allowed me to actually potentially see a business model out of that. And I think, to me, it hasn't happened overnight. This journey started 9 years ago. So the process has started, but all the inner work is coming to a point now. It's okay, well, potentially there's something there. So it doesn't happen overnight, but the inner work is definitely worth investing in. And I think what's actually been interesting for me, having just done some coaching, is really connecting on the heart level. Yeah, because actually, when we envisage business models and ideas, we get so lost in our head. Yeah. So to me, the heart and finding that sense of what really brings you joy and understanding your values in terms of what brings you joy, that to me is really important. So the inner work will then feed the outer work, because in effect, unless your values are being satisfied, then your work will become meaningless. It'll may make you money, may bring you money, but ultimately you won't be satisfied. So I think that's a really important point.
Appreciate that clarity. Yeah, and your experience mirrors what I've seen in myself and with clients I work with because of that. Yeah, you're bringing that soul with the impact, so you don't feel empty. That's the problem. We're keeping ourselves split, right? Where if my hobby, avocation, for you is yoga and the writing. For me it was the healing arts, the mystic arts. So then it was like, how does this feel? And we feel incomplete. We're torn. We're split. I mean, you can go on and on about it. So I love how you organically brought that up. Yeah, and I think that it has to ripen, because you're tuning into something, and then you're right. I've seen this repeatedly. The client goes, oh, this, and I go, well, because I'm on the outside looking in, I could see it before them that, oh, this is going to be a great business idea. And here's why. This is where your USP is. This is boom, 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 boom. Some of the stuff that, you're going through and in your development of it. So it's a ripening of the seed, right? It's like you got to bring the seed in, and then and that's the Sankalpa is, the way I understand it, is Sankalpa is like a seed of intention you plant and it grows, right? So I see it as the ripening of that seed behind you, Yogi Banker. Yeah.
Completely, absolutely. It's a seed. I love that. And the seed may take some time to germinate, because you learn so much on the journey, right? But then setting your intention and then just allowing it to grow, and allowing it to grow organically. Yeah. I think that's the most important point. Some people, I could employ a digital marketing coach, and we could take Yogi Banker huge tomorrow. But to me, well, am I ready to do that? Right?
Let's pause. Let me pause. I'm going to ask you in a reframe this flow real quick. Let me couch it for you, because I have an idea that popped in. If you did that in yoga, if you push through in yoga, talk to us about an analogy in anatomic form. What happens? Why wouldn't you want to push through in yoga, and then transpose that to what you were about to say? This notion of pushing through, correlated for us. I see.
So I mean, if you push through, the body will break. I mean, that's the point. I mean, the point being is that if that's where you're coming from, is basically everyone has, with stress. We're talking about earlier with yoga, right? You need a little bit of stress, but too much stress and the system will break. And it's the right balance between effort and relaxation. So to me, you put all that effort in, and you're too much effort, too much passion, too much focus can actually have the wrong result.
That's where I was last year when I started to kind of come out and do this, because I had to still do some tweaking, because I had residue of that old type A lawyer pushing. And I think that's what, would you say that's what burnout is then energetically? It's the system breaking?
It's the system breaking. It's burnout. It's basically, there's too much overload. There's too much thinking. There's too much focus. There's not enough time for well-being and wellness, and too much in the mind, and taking on too much. And often that comes through growth. Mindsets are important, but overachieving, over pushing yourself, fixating on targets and so forth, that in itself can actually result in, as we described, burnout. And burnout has a strong effect upon the body, physically and emotionally, and to some extent it's about organically supporting yourself and growing at a pace which allows you to live a life. We only live on this life for so many years, right? And so working all these hours, which lawyers and bankers do, to some extent, that in itself is going to set the seed for unhappiness. So organic growth for me is important.
I love that. I'm reminded of your analogy earlier, your breakdown earlier of yin, right? Which is, it's
Mm,
almost like that's the analogy that sticks out in how you described it. Is you go to the
mm,
edge, you go to your almost breaking point, and then you hold it there, and then you'll stretch, and then you'll know, okay, do some more. And I call that the Icarus effect. You don't want to fly too high. You don't want to suddenly go into this stretch and then go, all right, and then you're going to break something. So why don't we do that with our mindset or our heart or our energy? And that's what I think is the beauty of what you're teaching and we're showing. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. It is about finding your edge, and I think that's the biggest problem in the Western society. It's just more, and if you go beyond that edge, things will break down, and that's the nature of life. And unfortunately, either we become too weak, or we degenerate, or we become, we break. So it's find that real kind of that Goldilocks point principle, right in the middle, where that optimal level of performance.
Hence why the Buddhists called it the middle path, right? You got to be in
Mm,
the wave. You got to be in that, you got to thread the needle with the camel through the eye of the needle. I mean, there's biblical sayings on this. I mean, it's all
yeah.
it's saying, there's ebbs and flows, and eventually, there's one of the things that's unrelated that kind of may correlate is people always go, it's a struggle. It's always a struggle. I go, kind of. I feel like for me, I reach this cruising altitude I often talk about. And yes,
Mm,
there's still ebbs and flows. It's like, and maybe that's the capacity that we've built, right? We've done this
mm,
enough, endured, tolerated, persistent, like you said, paid
mm,
off, enough wax on, wax off, as I call it, enough that I get to a point I go, I don't really call those highs and lows anymore because maybe I don't register them the same way because it feels like the smoother now. It's still there. And I think that's the
mm,
cruising altitude is what I call it that we're all headed towards. And then that's like a myth. It's always stretching. And I think that's the other side is it always do, because there's a fear if I don't go more, bigger, badder, better, then you're gonna fall back and you're gonna lose. And I think that's the beauty of yoga, yin, and all that. So it's very beautiful.
Give me to that time. Yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
yeah, that's beautiful. Anything else, or do you? I know you already said your quote. Do you have an inspired quote or anything else you'd like to share to wind down and wrap up a?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was just looking at one of my favorite quotes from my yoga teacher, who I love, a guy called Nicoluce. On my training, I was looking at this quote today. He said, "The only way out is in. You've just got to lean into it. You know,
I
the
love
only way out is in. You've just got to lean into it."
the
And
only
I
way
love
out
that.
is in. Yeah,
Yeah, that to me really summarizes the yoga practice itself, but life itself. You've got to lean into it. If you're thinking on that edge, thinking, well, how am I going to break through? You just got to lean. Yeah, you got to lean, and then actually something will happen. Maybe you'll fall, right? But you will get back up, and then you'll try again. So it is about leaning into it to get out of the situation.
it's beautiful. Well, thank you for
Hmm.
being here, brother. It was really beautiful to share
You're
more.
welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
I told you, right when I saw you, I said, this guy's not only a yogi banker, he's a mystic, mystic in a suit like me. So thank you. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Vulnerable Power Show, where we like to go deep into the heart of vulnerable power and leadership ascension. And he's even using the verbiage. I love it. I couldn't time this better. You talk about vulnerability, you talk about heart, talk about all these beautiful things. If you like what you heard, share Scott's mission, my mission, why? Because we're here to have a collective mission, right? I love it. He brought up one of my, you could call it masters, teachers, Yogananda. Our goal is to serve others. So if you serve this mission, you support this episode, you're doing that. And together we're rising. So thank you. We wish you the best. We wish you peace and union, right? I think another form of the definition of yoga. And have a blessed day for now.